Welcome back to the second set. Tonight we're launching two novels in one volume, In Search of the Perfect Lawn and The Walled Garden by Michael Dean. They had been previously published by Black Box Press and then went out of print. And we decided to do a very handsome new edition of both novels in one volume. Michael is a writer, and he's been a performance artist and a sound poet. He was in the quartet Owen Sound, and that's where I actually met Michael. We became part of that quartet. He was also one of the founding editors of Teksteditions, and his fiction has appeared in various anthologies, and he's a member of the Writers Union of Canada. You're in for a treat. Please welcome Mr. Michael Dean.
Interview 1. Is there communication through lawns? When I'm out cutting the grass, I notice how people look at me and stop for a moment. They seem to enjoy watching me work. Somehow they know that I like my work, and they watch for a while how I create a pattern in the lawn out of the longer grass. When I look up from my machine, I see the looks on their faces. It's a kind of peace, a harmony that they experience. I bring out the character of the lawn from the grass. I don't fight it. I aim the lawnmower down the line of the wheel marks left from the last row that I just cut. In this way, I make sure that there are no tufts of grass left uncut. Often, grass gets pressed down by the wheels, and then you miss it altogether and only see it when you rake it afterwards. And if you've created a good pattern out of the grass, you hate to go over the lawn again just to get those tufts. Yesterday, I was cutting the lawn after a rain, and a girl walking on the far side of the street stopped and watched me. Her name was Rosemary. I enjoyed that moment. But the real pleasure I felt was in the work. I love my lawn and the smell of it after a rain. Rosemary saw me through it. Well, good evening, everybody. As Richard said, my name is Michael Dean. What he didn't mention is that when I am in this suit, I am the Marquis de Sade. And I'm very excited to have my two books republished by Teksteditions, and I'd like to thank both Bev Dario and Richard Truhlar for suggesting the project to me and getting behind it so wholeheartedly. I can't see with the light, but you're out there somewhere. And working through the details of republishing the books has revived my own enthusiasm for the books, and I'm going to read some more from them, starting with some more from In Search of the Perfect Lawn. So this, we'll go right ahead to the first section of the book is interviews. So it's someone is interviewing someone about lawns, and these are what they are. And here is interview number 8. Aren't you suggesting a connection between lawns and sexuality? Yesterday, when Rosemary watched me from the street, I asked her if she'd ever cut a lawn after a rain. She looked away. It's a deep and earthy experience, I said. There's a smell the grass gives off. The blades are swollen with the rain and they're a deeper green. The bristles are fat and moist, and the overall effect is that of softness. The flat surface of the freshly cut lawn holds the tension between this hardness and softness. It's quite a sensation working with it then, I said. It's firm yet yielding, giving yet reserved. The lawn is a separate thing, but we form a relationship in the work, a unity, like coupling. Cut grass is a good mulch for the garden, Rosemary said. Especially after a rain, I said. It is rich and fertile and helps things grow. Rosemary said, nothing is forsaken, nothing is lost in lawns. Interview 9. Aren't you asking an eschatological question and giving an ontological answer in lawns? Last night, Rosemary and I made love on the lawn. We rolled on top of each other and bits of cut grass stuck to our clothing and to the naked parts of our bodies. I love it now that we're doing it, Rosemary said. Tell me something important I've never known. Imagine that we're together for the first time after many years of separation, I said. I brushed bits of cut grass from Rosemary's thighs, describing how they looked like something transferred from the pages of a novel we were rolling in. The grass was newly cut and wet, clinging to our bodies and peeling away onto one another. What is the story of our love? She said. Who am I and what happens next because of me? I was revealing for Rosemary the secret meaning of the cut grass stuck to her thighs, calling her my novel. I was reading the grass like sentences. I courted you when we were young. Then I went off to war in France. When I got back, you couldn't wait and were married already to a wealthy man. So I too made myself wealthy and came to court you again with my personal elegance and new blue lawns. You turned me down, however, at the very end. Maybe they could find you face down in your own swimming pool, Rosemary said. We Are, I said, a short but significant 20th century American novel. I know, she said, The Great Gatsby. Our story began unfolding even more quickly than I had expected. Our characters began revealing themselves through action. The events of the story, foretold on Rosemary's thighs, were coming to pass. There was nothing new for me in this woman. The crisis of the story occurred right there. I saw all of my sex life as a series of unclean thoughts and impure acts with myself or others on lawns. There were no surprises for me in Rosemary, just new words for describing the acts of sex. I was frightened that I would get bored with it very soon and that it would all end tragically. I rolled on top of Rosemary and my throbbing member pressed against her belly. I found the center of her moist desire and entered her like the key in the lock of a Manhattan hotel room door, with the shower running in the other room, the radio on, and black lingerie over a chair. A piece of grass from Rosemary's belly was stuck on my penis as I moved in her. I thought that this piece of lawn was the capital letter P from the word passion. I dwelt on this thought. I meditated on my passion, spelled out in blades of grass on my body, moving in the woman. But the blade of grass was not the capital letter P. It was the letter G, the silent G in the word gnaw, the G of the ing in being. This story is the child of that coupling. This story was fathered by the silent G of being that swam into the woman, persisting and entering the central meaning of her round, fertile vowels. This story was mothered by the A and the E of the woman. This story's chromosome structure spells the word age. The beginning of time, the marking of time, the events occurring in time, and then their ending. This story is what I thought about as I cut the grass on my mother's lawn after my father had died and the rain had stopped and Rosemary was watching me from the street. This story is a collection of blades of grass on a woman's thighs. Now, originally, when I wrote In Search of the Perfect Lawn, I thought of this lawn suit being similar to a knight's chainmail, which fits the idea of questing for the perfect lawn. But then, the knight in Search of the Perfect Lawn became the Marquis de Sade through my writing of The Walled Garden. That's my way of explaining why it's now called the Marquis de Sade, because it is, the Walled Garden deals much more with the difficulties of struggling with everyday life in marriage, along with other things. So, what I'm going to do is I was talking it over to people as to what to read. And with David, as he's helping me get changed. And we kind of thought that I should start, just explain a bit about what the story's about. The story's about a couple who have a garden, and when they take out the rose bush from the garden, the marriage ends. So it has a crisis. And then they separate, but the rest of the novel is about how they come back together. And they're aided in this by the saints who occupy the margins around the text. And they speak to the people who are in the action within the text. So there's many drifting elements about abstract ideas in real life and how abstract ideas relate to real life. And so that's what I'm going to read. So it's kind of just dropping right into the middle of a somewhat reflective part of the novel. Garden writing has appeared in two forms in the West. There is the journal writing of the gardener and the commentary writing of the landscape architect. The gardener sees everything from inside the garden, and the landscape architect sees it all from the top of the garden wall. The gardener is literal, and the landscape architect finds the meaning. In terms of this novel, the gardener tells the story of what happened to me and Claudette in the garden, and the landscape architect writes the theories about what's happening. Language requires belief. Philo of Alexandria, of course, if I need to clarify who I'm talking about, who's a pre-Socratic writer. He wasn't pre-Socratic, I'm sorry, but he writes about the Garden of Eden. Philo changed writing forever when he demonstrated that language is, in fact, a belief system unto itself. Metaphor encloses it. Metaphor is a wall around the Garden of Eden. Before Claudette came to live at my house, there was nothing in my backyard except ragged lawn and some creeping ground cover in the corners. I used to hate gardening, even cutting the grass. Then Claudette planted the new rose bush sent to her by Tante Huguette and started the climbing hydrangea. Immediately, I insisted that we make a plan for the garden. Claudette chose the trees and shrubs, and she planted all the flowers. I designed the shape of the beds. This created a problem for me right away. Whenever I entered the garden, I could only see the plan that I was making. I could not see the wild and unpredictable quality of the things growing around me. I told Claudette, I am blinded by the order underlying and informing these growing things. Claudette understood. This tendency in me had always been a weakness in our marriage. The same tendency is the weakness at the heart of allegorical language. There is an assumption that the most real thing is something abstract, while the image or personification is created for the sake of the abstraction. just as I wrote that line, that last line, in fact, just as I wrote the word abstraction, a mysterious breeze blew into the garden, and as a result, the patches of sunlight began moving rapidly back and forth across the page. This forced me to stop writing. I rested my head against the back of the love seat and looked up and saw the sky through the branches of the linden and felt the breeze on my cheek. I'm not sure, but I think I fell asleep for a moment. I remember closing my eyes, and I remember the breeze dying down, and I remember sitting up again and looking over my notes and coming to the last sentence that I'd written earlier, coming to the word abstraction, and wondering if language requires belief, then what is reading? A form of religious practice, or faith, or patience, or a breeze in paradise? So, and then I want to read one more section from here, but let me just check something else. I want to look. This is what I'm going to read this section. It's called The First Purport. Metaphor is the central structure within continuous prose that serves the text in the same way that the knot serves weaving. Metaphor is to text as knot is to textile. The carpets of Islam were designed on the patterns of enclosed gardens. These gardens were designed to reflect the paradise of the beloved. These paradise gardens were physical expressions of the beloved's presence in the human heart. Metaphor, then, is a knot in the heart, one beat in the experience of its continuous beating. These knots, when repeated in a left-to-right sequence, create a pattern. But because each knot is also a moment, weaving becomes a way of repeating the finite moment infinitely. The infinite is captured in the finite in the pattern of the weave and the symbol of visual unity the weaving creates in the finished carpet design. Of course, the exact same thing is true of continuous prose in the novel. Unique to the novel, however, is the ability to reconcile all apparent discrepancies within the text by using the intermediate sentence or chapter, like this one. So, as we turn each page, we move no closer to infinity. But each page is attached to the preceding page, and although these pages create a pattern that, when taken as a whole in the finished book, becomes a symbol of the infinite. How we love to hold a book. We hold it in one hand and turn the pages one at a time with the fingers of the other hand. How we love to turn pages and to repeat this turning endlessly as an acceptance of our limit, as a form of reconciliation with the infinite, which has caused such grief in us because we cannot hold it except in the heart, except in one moment at a time, squeezing paradise with each heartbeat, running our fingers down the edge of the paper as we pause, then turn the page, then pause again, and continue turning, as if we have done this forever and can keep doing this forever. So thank you very much. Well, thank you all very much. It's been a pleasure to be here to read to you and to have my lawn suit made. I used to have a lawn suit when the book first came out, and I wanted to have one for when it's out again. So happy gardening and lawn mowing, everyone. Okay, good night.